Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, When It's Time to Upgrade Your Microsoft Dynamics GP. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. There are a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand so that we can unmute you, or you can submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We will be answering questions throughout the presentation, and we'll also be following up after the presentation to answer any additional questions. I'd like to introduce today's speaker. We have Daryl Moy, who is a senior GP consultant here at Socius. So at this point, Daryl, I believe we're ready to transition the presentation over to you.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for attending today's webinar. Lindsay mentioned my name is Daryl Moy. I'm a senior consultant here at Socius with the Dynamics GP team. For today's session, it is called When It's Time to Upgrade Microsoft Dynamics GP, and we'll be essentially discussing the reasons that your organization should consider and also plan for upgrading GP. I do have this webinar blocked for an hour. We won't go to that extent, but we'll definitely have plenty of time remaining for questions and answers at the end of the session. So just a couple of housekeeping items before I get into the webinar. You may see a little GoToWebinar dashboard on the top right-hand corner, and I just wanted to point out some of these icon control buttons here in case you need to hide or show the control panel. There's a button for full screen, and there's also a button for raise hand in case you have any questions or comments that you need to ask during the webinar. But like I mentioned, we'll definitely have plenty of time at the end of this webinar for questions. So for our agenda, really just a couple of topics that I wanted to dive into. One is just to discuss the reasons to upgrade Dynamics GP, and then just talk about some general planning and also what to expect as part of the upgrade process. And of course, we'll have time for Q&A. So there's probably several reasons why your organizations have explored or discussed about whether or not to upgrade Dynamics GP, as also when to upgrade Dynamics GP. Reasons including such as new features, better performance or support, etc. But really, what it really boils down to is these three key reasons that I'll discuss about when to upgrade Dynamics GP. The first thing is revolving around the reason to maintain support from Microsoft. The second is just being able to comply with the hardware and software requirements within your IT infrastructure. And the third, last but not least, is just taking advantage of the new features and enhancements of the new version or the current version of Dynamics GP. So we'll talk about all these three in detail. For the first reason is to upgrade Dynamics GP is to really maintain support from Microsoft. In general, maintaining support essentially means having assistance from Microsoft when needed, such as getting the service packs, hotfix, or payroll tax updates if you are using payroll. So this slide essentially shows what version is on mainstream support at this time. The current versions that are still on mainstream support are GP 2013, 2015, and the latest release is 2016. For the prior versions that have ended mainstream support is GP 10 and 2010, and any other versions below that, such as like GP 9 or GP 8. There are what we call extended support, but it's limited support from Microsoft. The versions that are on extended support is GP 10 and 2010, and versions that are essentially no longer supported at all are GP version 9 and below. So there is a difference between mainstream support and extended support. So let me just talk a little detail more about that. Essentially, once mainstream support ends for your version, extended support goes into effect. And extended support, again, just means you're on somewhat of a limited support. So let's take a look at the key differences between mainstream support and extended support. So this slide just essentially shows that what the mainstream support services include. Essentially, it includes everything, such as if you were to log a case in, there would be no charge for the instant support. You can pay for support, but that's under special circumstances. If your version is still under mainstream support, you're still entitled to any security updates and security hot fixes and service packs. You're still under warranty claims. If you make any customizations or design changes with your version, it will still be supported. And under mainstream support, you'll still have any type of knowledge base articles, KB articles available for your version. Now, once mainstream support ends for your version, then it moves into extended support. So with extended support, it's somewhat limited. You won't really have much access to logging in no charge incident cases. Certain support that you'll get, you'll have to pay for it. There are still some security updates that you can apply for your version, but in terms of hot fixes and service packs, Microsoft essentially stops providing any hot fixes and service packs at that point. And then, of course, the warranty claims and customization, design requests and changes goes away. With extended support, you'll still have access to knowledge base articles related to your version. So to put things in a little bit more perspective, is here are the different versions. What really basically mainstream support means is that you are covered for pretty much all the services, and then once mainstream support ends, extended support kicks in. And if you, in general, if your version happens to go beyond mainstream and extended support ends, Socius, generally speaking, we would do our best to still support you. But in the event that we need Microsoft to provide any type of service packs or hot fixes to resolve any issues, then Microsoft most likely would respond that say, hey, you're on the older version, we can't really provide service packs and hot fixes. So on this bottom portion of the screen, I just wanted to point out the different versions that are still currently on mainstream and extended support. So for example, if you are on GP 2010, your mainstream support has ended, but you are still under extended support all the way through until October 13th, 2020. And with GP 2013, extended support, mainstream support will go through until next year of 2018. And then extended support will end on 2023. So as I mentioned, generally speaking, despite the dates of when Microsoft ends support, we at Socius will do our best effort to provide you the technical support on your version until you upgrade to the most current version or a supported version. So for example, if you're still on GP 10 or prior, we will recommend you to upgrade. But if you encounter some issues or anything of that sort with your version, we'll do our best effort to support you. But if we need Microsoft to provide any type of hotfix or service packs, then they'll probably just have to respond and say, we can't support that anymore. So with regards to maintaining support from Microsoft, I mean, in summary, our recommendation is that if you are in GP 2010 or a lower version, we strongly recommend you to start planning for the upgrade. If you're on GP 2013, a good time to start planning for the upgrade is during 2018 and 2020. And if you do plan for the upgrade, the current versions are, at this point, supported versions are GP 2015 and 2016. So moving on to the second reason of why you should consider the GP upgrade is, at some point in time, your organization will upgrade or may upgrade the internal system infrastructure. And when this does occur, it may or may not affect your decision of whether or not you will need to also upgrade Dynamics GP. This means that if your company has any updates or changes to the servers or computers, it will likely affect the decision about upgrading GP to be supported on any of your servers. So, for example, many organizations are now on Windows Server 2012, and this just means that you must be on GP 2013 or higher. And eventually, once organizations move to Windows 2016, then the supported versions will be GP 2016. So there are different scenarios within your organization's IT infrastructure that can affect the decision to upgrade GP. Another scenario is related to SQL servers. If you're on SQL 2012, you've got to be on Service Pack 3 for GP 2010 or higher to be supported. And then once you move to higher levels of SQL Server versions like 2014 and 2016, as you can see, you've got to be on specific versions of GP to be supported. So these are just the servers and the SQL Server scenarios. There are also workstation terminals and Microsoft Office scenarios that can affect the decision to upgrade GP. For some organizations that are still on Windows 7, GP 10 or higher is still supported. But once you move the Windows operating system to Windows 8, then you've got to be on GP 2013 or greater. And then same thing with Windows 10. You got to be on R2 for GP 2013 or higher to be supported. And then with Microsoft Office, for Office 2010, you can still be on GP 10 through GP 2015. But once it goes into Office 2013, the only supported versions for these two combinations is GP 2013 or higher. And then for Office 2016, the supported versions would be for GP 2015 R2 or higher. So in summary, depending on your organization's hardware and software scenario, those can affect your decision to upgrade Dynamics GP. The other reason that I didn't mention on the slide is, going to the cloud, whether it's Associates Cloud or moving your Dynamics GP to the Microsoft Cloud, that can also affect the decision that you'll need to upgrade GP, because at this point right now, if you're still on GP 2010, moving to the cloud, chances are, whether it's Associates Cloud or Microsoft Cloud, it's recommended to upgrade to a supported version of Dynamics GP. So the third reason is, last but not least, is just taking advantage of the new features and enhancements with Dynamics GP. It's probably one of the most significant ones for the users, because there's several new features that are available, especially with Dynamics GP 2015 and 2016. And just wanted to discuss about a few examples. The first and foremost is, of course, the web client. With the new release of GP, they've enhanced it with using HTML, so it's supported with different browsers besides Internet Explorer, such as Firefox, Mozilla. And the web client is a nice feature for especially cloud-based for remote users as well to log into GP. A lot of new reporting and analytics features that came out of the box with the new version, including SSRS reports, dashboards, and business intelligence features. Another popular feature, the new version of Dynamics GP, include the ability to attach documents to several transaction windows, such as the sales transactions, purchasing transactions. And another significant new enhancement with Dynamics GP new version is the management reporter. You can think of that as the replacement of FRX. So for folks that are still using GP 2010 or below, chances are you're still using FRX, but once you upgrade, the new financial reporting tool is Management Reporter. Then the other popular new feature with Dynamics GP includes the copy and paste journal entries. You can essentially have an Excel spreadsheet of the journal entries, copy it, and paste it into GP. So we found that one to be a popular functionality that many users are using with the new version. And then another nice enhancement is having a all-in-one view of the vendor's transactions that shows you their purchase orders, the receipts, and invoices all in one screen. So you don't need to have the several windows open just to view their POs, the receipts, and the invoices. So just to recap, I mean, as I mentioned, there's probably several reasons that that the organization's process or reviewed about when it's time to upgrade GP, but essentially what it really boils down to is these three. Is just to maintain support from Microsoft, complying with the hardware and software requirements within your IT infrastructure, or even if you're deciding to move to the Microsoft Cloud or the Associates Cloud. And of course, the last but not least is just taking advantage of the new features and enhancements of the new version of Dynamics GP. And the other foremost, the other reason that I didn't mention as well earlier is there's other reasons for upgrading, including performance reasons. You also may decide to have customizations or purchase add-on solutions to your existing version. Well, sometimes some of these customizations and add-on solutions are no longer supported on older versions. So if you were to do any customizations or add-on solutions, it's best to get the current release of GP so that it can be on a supported version. So with that said, I'll just talk a little bit about just general planning for upgrade. I mean, what's involved with the upgrade typically comes down to these few points. You want to make sure that if you are planning to host Dynamics GP on-premise, you want to ensure that all of your hardware and software meets the minimum requirements. You will need to, if you're hosting Dynamics GP on-premise, you do want to consider preparing a test and production environment. The reason for this is that with the new upgrade, there's several new enhancements and features, and you want to have an environment where you can test the new version of GP before you actually do the production cutover. It's also good to do a test upgrade as well so that you can identify if there's any bugs or issues that needs to be resolved and make sure that it's been resolved so that it doesn't occur during the production cutover. Of course, the other important thing is you want to make sure you plan for dates and resources to be involved with the upgrade. Dates include a time frame to do some testing, and then the date to do the actual production cutover. Resources to be involved is getting individuals to work with the testing of GP and to validate the data of the upgrade as well. If you do have any add-on solutions or customizations that are provided by other partners, you want to make sure you coordinate that with your partners so let them know that you are planning to do the upgrade and that they have a supported version for your release of Dynamics GP. Later on this month, we will have a webinar on what's involved for the GP upgrade, so stay tuned for that because that webinar will go into additional details about what's involved with the upgrade. And then just as far as just general expectations during the upgrade process, our associates team will work with your technical staff on server preparation, especially if you are doing this on-premise. Now, if you do decide to go to the cloud, we'll work with you on that in terms of what type of files and data we need to bring up to the Associates Cloud or even the Microsoft Cloud. And during the upgrade process, especially when you're going through the testing, we'll work with you on that as well. We'll work with your internal staff through the testing process, because if there's any bugs or issues that needs to be resolved, we want to make sure that we iron those out before we actually do the production cutover. I mean, once we do the actual production cutover, I mean, there is going to be some downtime. Typically, we try to schedule the upgrade and work with the time frame that has the least disruption to your finance team. Can be 1 day, no more than 2 days of disruption time, but depending on the scope of your upgrade process, we'll work with you to determine, what's the best time frame to do the actual production cover, just to minimize the disruption to the finance team. And of course, with the upgrade, I mean, we'll provide you the post-upgrade support and training as well, just in case some new users need to get trained or get familiar with the new version of GP. So as I mentioned, we will have a webinar coming up on what's involved in upgrading your Dynamics GP. That's going to be on February 16th. And there is a new promotion as well. For those of you that are interested with the site license of RecLogic, there are 20 free users with the purchase of RecLogic. So anybody who's interested with the RecLogic application, check with us and we can talk to you about the promotional package with the 20 free users. We do have more webinars coming up, so please go to our website and check out our webinar series at www.associatesone.com. So as I mentioned, I do have this time blocked, but I have some time for questions if anybody has questions.
There are no questions right now, but if you do have them, remember you can put them in the question box and we will stay on for a couple more minutes, and if anybody has questions, just feel free and we'll get those answered for you.